This Timu Testify Muslim apologist wants to dunk on Matthew and Luke, aka the Gospel, the very thing his Quran keeps affirming. Kinda awkward since his Quran also borrows some of the virgin birth stories straight from them. Let's see what he has to say.
We've all heard a Christian tell us that the Bible is the inerrant, infallible Word of God that is not corrupted and has no contradictions whatsoever. In the Gospel of Matthew, Matthew says that Jesus was born during the reign of King Herod. Now, history is very clear on this. Herod died in 4 BCE, which means if Jesus was born under Herod, it had to be 4 BC or earlier than 4 BC. But then we turn to the Gospel of Luke, and suddenly everything falls apart. Luke claims Jesus was born during a census ordered by Quirinius, the governor of Syria. The problem is Quirinius didn't become governor until 6 CE, about 10 years after Herod's death. This is the only census recorded in that region under Roman rule, and it happened long after Herod was dead. So here's the issue. Matthew says Jesus was born by 4 BCE at the latest. Luke says it was in 6 CE. We're looking at a gap of about a decade. They both simply cannot be true.
This recycled Bart Ehrman lazy meme argument collapses the minute you read the text carefully and check the historical sources. Luke isn't bumbling his dates. He opens his nativity account in Luke 1:5 with, "In the days of Herod, king of Judea." That's not a vague throwaway, that's Luke planting a historical flag. Jesus' birth story is set in Herod's reign. Any reading of Luke 2:2 that throws the timeline into 6 AD would make Luke contradict himself in literally 2 chapters. And Luke explicitly states that Jesus was in his 30s when he started his ministry. That math doesn't add up. And it's not like Luke's clueless about the 86 census under Quirinius. He references it in Acts 5:37, connecting it to Judas the Galilean's revolt. He knows that the census happened after Herod was dead. So no, Luke isn't mixing up 2 censuses. He's pointing out 2 separate Quirinian moments. But you're not going to like that answer, are you?
Some apologists have tried to argue that maybe there was an earlier census under Quirinius, but historians and Roman records are crystal clear. There was no earlier census. Luke's timeline simply does not fit with Matthew's. This is not some minor error. This is a huge contradiction about the time of Jesus' birth. If these Gospels are inspired and historically accurate, then why can't they agree on such a basic detail?
There's a lot of problems here. First, let's break down Luke 2:2, which reads, "This was the first registration when Quirinius was governing Syria." Orthodox Muslim assumes that this must be the famous 86 census, but the Greek word prote, first, can also mean former or earlier, like we see in John 1:15 or John 15:18. Luke's likely saying that this was the earlier census associated with Quirinius, not the later one that sparked the tax revolt. And once you see that, the contradiction evaporates. He also then hand-waves away the idea of an earlier census under Quirinius, like Quirinius only entered the scene in 86. But Tacitus in Annals 348 tells us that Quirinius was already a key military commander in Cilicia, which borders Syria, from 12 to 6 BC. He had major influence over the area well before his official governorship. Meanwhile, the former legate of Syria from 9 to 6 BC was Caius Sentius Saturninus. Tertullian explicitly tells us that Saturninus conducted a census in Judea at Augustus's command during this period, lining up perfectly with the 8 BC imperial decree, which I'll discuss in a moment. So why does Luke name drop Quirinius and not Saturninus? It's because Quirinius was the guy on the ground running the show. Roman practice separated the office holder from the guy actually cracking heads and doing the counting. So Quirinius was the military enforcer overseeing the census, and Luke uses a Greek word which doesn't require him to be the legate. Luke uses the same verb for Pilate, and Pilate wasn't a legate either. It just means he was ruling or commanding. So no, Luke wasn't inventing a fake census under the wrong governor. Also, Orthodox Muslim is just flat out wrong. There was an earlier census, as I alluded to earlier. Augustus himself brags in the Deeds of Divine Augustus 8 about counting 4 to 5 million citizens empire-wide, starting in 8 BC. Like everything Roman, it rolled out slow, likely hitting Judea around 7 to 6 BC, with Saturninus in charge and Quirinius overseeing the logistics. We even have Egyptian papyri that does show that people did register late under Roman censuses and had to return to their ancestral homes. So Joseph and Mary in Bethlehem at 7 to 6 BC under Herod is exactly what we would expect, fitting both Matthew and Luke. It's wild how Muslims bash the Gospels when their own Quran calls them light and guidance and tells Christians to judge by them. Meanwhile, they do backflips for their own Quranic contradictions, but never show the Bible the same charity that their own Quran does. Let's be honest, without the Bible, Muslims wouldn't even know when or where Jesus was even born.